Hello and welcome to SLP Newsbeat. I'm Kirby Anna. SLP Newsbeat is dedicated to bringing you news from the St. Lucia Labour Party, its activities, its policies, information on its candidates as the party prepares for the next general elections. SLP Newsbeat will also bring you commentaries on political issues, historical notes, and other special features. Welcome once again to SLP Newsbeat for Wednesday, 5th May 2021. Now the headlines. The St. Lucia Labour Party denounces the government's extension of the COVID-19 state of emergency as a ploy to buy time for the elections. Former Labour Party Youth Development Minister Sean Edward appeals to young people to participate in the Labour Party's program to revolutionize agriculture. And now the details. The opposition St. Lucia Labour Party has denounced the government's extension of the state of emergency as an unnecessary guise for its election plans. The opposition argued against the extension to October 2021 when the House of Assembly debated the bill on Tuesday. The bill was passed due to the government's majority in the House. In our next edition of SLP Newsbeat, we will bring you details of the St. Lucia Labour Party's arguments against the extension. Former Labour Party Youth Development Minister and MP for Dennery North, Sean Edward, has exhorted young people to participate in the Labour Party's program to revolutionize agriculture and make it more attractive for young people. Speaking at the St. Lucia Labour Party's virtual public meeting on Sunday, showcasing its new young candidates for the upcoming elections, Edward added that it was time to dispel the notion that agriculture was something for the less fortunate and the uneducated.
Political leader of the St. Lucia Labour Party, former Deputy Prime Minister, former Minister of Tourism, Infrastructure, Financial Services, etc., Member of Parliament for Castries East, and the next Prime Minister of St. Lucia, the Honourable Philip J. Pierre, colleague parliamentarians, fellow candidates, executive members of our party, well-wishers, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. We are mere weeks away from the general election. And for many, the general election will bring about hope. It will bring about opportunities for us to redeem ourselves from a very uncaring and vindictive administration, the United Workers' Party. Every sector of national development has been bruised or scarred by the programs of this government. This is the most uncaring government St. Lucia has ever had to preside over its affairs. What has this government done for the farmers of this country? How have the young people of St. Lucia benefited from the programs of the United Workers' Party? The youth are crying out for help, and all they've gotten from the UWP in 4 3/4 years is only lip service. When they took to the campaign trail, they promised the young people of this country, and by extension the citizens of this country, that they were going to transform the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College into a university. And 5 years have elapsed. Where is the university that they promised to the young people of this country? When they came in, they found a laptop program that was being rolled out very smoothly and very efficiently by the St. Lucia Labour Party. They decided to stop that program. The playing fields and facilities that we had established between 2011 to 2016, the majority of them were in a state of abandonment. And with elections being mere weeks away, they now want to deploy people to take care of the playing facilities in this country. But I say to them that the young people of St. Lucia are more discerning today than they would have been a few years ago. And when I meet them in every community, on the street corners, on the buses, it doesn't matter where you engage them in conversation, the young people, like the majority of St. Lucians, are saying to us that they cannot wait to go to the polls to vote out this United Workers' Party administration. And what about the farmers? The farmers have been on the receiving end of this administration for 4 3/4 years. There is absolutely nothing that the United Workers' Party can point to by way of interventions that have brought about relief in any meaningful way to the farmers of this country. Farmer paysa, jatape koyo pile difficulté, koyo ka try fait bagay pour koyo, pour soin famille yo, et pour mener l'argent tout un pays ça là. Et que là yo ka mandé un petit ouendé puis un petit soulagement, hot gouvernement, yo pas ka joindre rien. Et pas tout un farmer pas ka joindre rien. Ou ka wè l'autre secteur ka joindre quantité d'assistance, hot gouvernement, mais yo pas quoi farmer c'est monde qui est important. And I've said before, and my colleagues in the parliament have said on behalf of the Labour Party, that we are never about pitting agriculture against tourism. They both are important. And today, unlike what obtained in previous times, tourism is the mainstay of our economy. And I understand that the government has to work in tandem with all the different stakeholders of the tourism industry so as to bring about the revenue that we need to keep our country going. But you must never forget the smaller sectors. And as somebody who represents a rural constituency in the parliament of this country, I will always be a voice for the farmers of this country, especially banana farmers, people who rear small ruminants, vegetable farmers. They make a contribution. And in times of difficulties like now, in periods of crisis, they are crying out to our government. This United Workers' Party government has borrowed in excess of $500 million as COVID relief. All I want you to do, if you do not want to take my word for it, is to go into the different farming communities, engage the farmers, go on the bays, engage the fisher folk, and ask them what form of relief have they gotten from the government that has borrowed in excess of $500 million to provide relief to the citizens of St. Lucia, particularly those who have been directly impacted by COVID. My brothers and sisters, a St. Lucia Labour Party will put the farmers, will put the fisher folk, and will put the young people of St. Lucia first. They will be at the center of our programming. And today, I want to speak to the young people of St. Lucia. I want to let you know that there is hope for you with a St. Lucia Labour Party government under the directorship of the Honorable Philip J. Pierre. Our record in government speaks for itself in terms of how we've programmed and what we did and how we intervened in the lives of young people. It was the St. Lucia Labour Party, upon realizing that the world was moving in a direction of technology and information, and as we entered the information age, we could not have allowed parents who had the money to buy laptop and smart devices for their children. That would have created a lopsided situation in terms of our development. And we took the very bold decision that whether you would come from a family that could have afforded or you came from a family that was destitute, we were going to provide laptop computers to the children to ensure that everybody was moving on an even plane. When they came in, they stopped the laptop program. And there has been lip service, and more lip service to the young people. And I want to say to you young people, we want you to venture into the realm of business. No longer can the public sector or the public service absorb the thousands of you who will be leaving school every year. We understand that. We understand that we have to create new job opportunities for you. And recently we heard the United Workers' Party boasting about the number of young people employed in the different call centers. We support your employment in the different call centers. But let us not forget who paved the way. Let us not forget the history of call centers in this country. It was the St. Lucia Labour Party during the reign of Dr. Kenny Anthony, working very steadfastly with a very dedicated and committed Minister for Commerce at the time, Philip J. Pierre, who went out there and brought in companies like e-services and the other call centers. And they've been telling our young people, particularly those from the South, that when the St. Lucia Labour Party comes into office, the Labour Party, they've been telling the young people, will close down call centers like Ojo Labs and Intel BPO. I want to say to you tonight that this is false. We have absolutely no intention to close down any call center upon assuming office. As a matter of fact, we will look to expand the number of call centers in this country to provide employment opportunities for young people. But we also understand that whereas you can get employment at a call center to pay your bills and to make a contribution to the financial situation at home, there is more to youth development than employment at a call center. This is just a stopgap measure. It helps the social environment. It creates employment. But we have always preached and embraced a doctrine for sustainable youth development. And that is why we are going to increase the amount of money allocated for scholarships and bursaries and things of that sort. In a small society like ours, where we do not have mineral resources, human resource development is critical for our survival in a global environment. And more of you under the St. Lucia Labour Party will be able to access higher education. And more of you will go into industry. And the political leader has spoken very eloquently about the youth economy that we're trying to set up for the young people of this country. And it's not all about business in castries or business where you enter a little building and you provide a service. We are going to encourage some of our young people, particularly those of you in the rural parts of this country, to go and work the land and to revolutionize agriculture. The time has come in this country for us to permanently discredit that misguided notion that agriculture is something for the less fortunate or for people who are quote-unquote uneducated. That is not true. Food security is pretty much on the agenda of developing and developed countries. We have to begin to give new meaning to growing what we eat and eating what we grow. And so a St. Lucia Labour Party will make agriculture attractive to young people again. A St. Lucia Labour Party will put measures in place to ensure that the young people of this country can look at fishing as a viable form of livelihood. Not where they hop onto a boat and go out at sea and just do things in the same way that their grandparents would have done them. No! We are going to bring in the technology. We are going to modernize the equipment. And we are going to put all the support structures in place whereby young people can see fishing and agriculture as viable forms of livelihood that can take care of themselves and to cause them to attain a lot of the dreams that have been eluding them for some time now. Gouvernement Labour, qui prend des marches pour faire tout gens pays, en particulier jeunes moun wè, that les yo aller en agricole et puis yo aller en affaires pêche, that yo ka fait un bagay que yo sa fait en contribution pour koyo, pour famille yo et pour pays nous. Nous devons tirer kachil ça là en l'idée moun. Côté yo ka kwe that agricole et puis bagay pêche, c'est pour moun qui pas ni éducation. Et que manière la terre ka aller jodi a, nous ka dit ça c'est un bagay qui passe jamais en l'intérêt pays nous si c'est comme ça kachil citoyen pays nous ka yé. My brothers and sisters, your best hope, your best chances are with the St. Lucia Labour Party. And we have seen for 4 3/4 years a government that has worked, and very recently we heard it from the senator, a government that works only in the interest of people who voted for their party. How can that be right in 2021? We have come a long way into the new millennium, and that is the thinking. How can that augur well for national development? But you know what? An opportunity to bring an end to this is on the horizon. And soon from today, whenever he decides to call the election, that will signal the end of flambeau reign in St. Lucia for some time. You need to go out there and vote. Too many of you, you recognize the wrongs of the UWP. You see the wrongs of the UWP unfolding before your eyes every day. But you take the cowardly retort opposition and say you're not voting. You have a duty, if not to yourself, but to your children, your grandchildren, to this country that our fathers worked so hard to build, to go out there and say enough is enough. And we're not asking you to take up arms. We're not asking you to get confrontational. We're not asking you to get physical with anybody. But you can make a very powerful and decisive statement. When you walk into the polling station, wherever you registered, to cast a vote, if not for the St. Lucia Labour Party, against the workings of Alan Chastanet and his very uncaring government. I have a lot of confidence in the ability of Philip J. Pierre, a trusted man, an educated man, a compassionate man, a man with an impeccable record of achievement in government, a man with a record that is the envy of many of his counterparts in private business. And I believe that when given a chance to preside over the affairs of this country, St. Lucia will be a better place under the stewardship and guidance of Philip J. Pierre and his cabinet and his team of candidates. A nice blend of youth and experience. From Grosile in the north to Vieux Fort in the south. We have to make our voices heard. This is a time for action. This is not even about party politics. This is about the salvation of our country. And it can never be enough for you to say that you're not going to vote or you will sit out this election. This is a time for all patriotic St. Lucians. This fight is beyond the St. Lucia Labour Party in the sense that it cannot be supporters of our party only. You have to vote purely on the basis of your patriotism. And if you love your country, you can never stay home on election day and tell me you do not see a need to vote out a government that will cause $112 million to be spent on a horse racing facility. And for 3 years, they will suspend work on the major healthcare facility in the south of the country. That cannot be right. It's not everybody in St. Lucia, the rural parts, the southern part of our country, who have the resources to be able to hop on an air ambulance to seek medical care in Martinique and in Miami and in Cuba, as those affluent citizens in this country can do. What about the Mali way? And people use the Mali way when it is convenient. People speak about the poor and the marginalized when it is convenient. All those persons who want to proclaim themselves as champions of the poor and the Mali way, this is the time to act. You may not be a skilled worker to go into the hospital to help with the construction effort. But you can say, by going out there to vote for the St. Lucia Labour Party or vote against the UWP, that you are making a contribution because you have a conscience, because you have a duty to country, because you love your country, because you understand the implications and the ramifications of what is happening now for future generations like your grandchildren and your children and your little cousins. My brothers and sisters, the St. Lucia Labour Party is on course for victory. Whether he decides to go beyond the stipulated time or not, I can assure you of one thing, that when the votes are counted in all of the 17 constituencies, in the majority, the seats will be coming to the St. Lucia Labour Party. We will not just form government, but we will immediately embark on a program to put St. Lucia back on a right track. Because we care. Because we understand what you've been put through for 4 3/4 years. And you have suffered enough. And thankfully, elections are just weeks away. The St. Lucia Labour Party stands ready. The St. Lucia Labour Party is a caring organization. Philip J. Pierre is a leader who cares about the average man in St. Lucian society. He understands the plight of big business. And we also understand that everybody must work together. It should never be a case where it is the Mali way or the marginalized versus people in big business. There is a place for all citizens of St. Lucia, irrespective of your social status. And yes, we will be working with foreigners as well. But we will denounce every opportunity when we see foreigners are being given advantage in this country that they do not deserve. Uncaring, undeserving foreigners in every country in the world, in every region of the world, especially developing countries. There must be a place for foreigners, but it has to be regulated. It can and should never be at the expense of the average St. Lucian who wants to make an objective contribution to national development. For exemple, élection pas loin. Ou ka ite nan chay manchons ka sorti hod flambeau. Si men passe ou tan yon ministre, Guy Joseph Vigné Pidou, that Flambeau qui a gagné l'élection 16-1. Ça c'est un manchonze. Ça c'est Paul un homme qui paie. Ça c'est Paul un parti qui savent en trois cas. Et pièce côté en la terre. Yon un parti politique savent qui a gagné l'élection. Autant go margin. Pour qui ça yon paie qui élection? Yon paie. Yon qui paie hodia. Mais on y a une responsabilité. Pas dit ou pas à vote. Nous n'y pas vote. Si vous pas vote by les bas, si vous pas vote by les bas, allez vote contre Flambeau. Parce que ça Flambeau qui a fait pays, il passe à jamais en l'enterrer citoyen pays et puis l'autre génération qui va venir après nous. Long live the St. Lucia Labour Party.
That was Sean Edward, the Dennery North MP, as he addressed the Labour Party's Putting Youth First virtual meeting last Sunday. In observance of April as Youth Month, the program featured the SLP's young election candidates speaking on the party's youth policies and plans. You're listening to SLP Newsbeat, a production of the St. Lucia Labour Party. Wayne Gerard is the party's youthful candidate for Ancillary Canneries, and at the Putting Youth First virtual meeting, he encouraged young persons to use their energies to get into business.
Political leader, Honorable Philippe J. Pierre, members of the St. Lucia Labour Party, ladies and gentlemen, people of Ancillary Canneries. Society tells you to go to school, work hard, get good grades so that someday you will grow up and get a job. Whilst sound advice, it only paints a piece of the picture. Why not go out and utilize your youth, drive, passion, energy, freedom to create something rather than simply being satisfied with accepting what is laid out for you? Why are we not creating new jobs? We ask the youth to have confidence in their ideas, but what we are witnessing now is limited opportunity, limited access to opportunity, a limited future. These limitations undermine our identity, undermine our economy, and will ultimately destroy our society, which is bad news for everyone. Your life is hard and stressful. We in the Labour Party get that, but it's not your fault. Business exists in a global context. However, your geographical location may provide certain advantages. Given our current ease of doing business rankings, entrepreneurs are bound to struggle when starting a business. We need to work towards reducing the cost and time it takes to launch a business and provide mentorship when necessary. The Ease of Doing Business report illustrates the link between ease of doing business and economic growth. Clearly, in our case, there are still some significant barriers in place that not only deter entrepreneurship, but also inhibit growth. All you need is an internet connection, a device, and a drive to create. Sadly, in Millet at the Human Resource Development Center, there is an internet connection, a router, except it is password protected, depriving the young people of the surrounding area access to the internet. Under the premiership of Philippe J. Pierre, we will always seek to give the young of today the opportunities for tomorrow. It is time to tackle inequality, to get radical. A mild tweaking of the system is not going to work, particularly in the aftermath of this United Workers' Party administration. When I say inequality, I mean inequality of outcomes, inequality in incomes, inequality of opportunities, inequalities in healthcare, education, everything. We are not going to be able to deal with something so systemic, something as deep as the inequalities that exist, unless we go deeper and attack the underlying forces, the rules of the game, how the system operates and responds to the needs of the young people of this country. Young entrepreneurs need more networks and support groups. The introduction of the Youth Economy Ministry demonstrates political will and a desire to see a cooperative effort to promote youth entrepreneurship in society. While the creation of an enterprise is a personal and individual adventure, it is also the business of society as a whole, because its benefits are collective. As French President Jacques Chirac once said, enterprise creation is indeed the key to growth and employment. To prepare for our future, we must learn from our past. Our young people are our future. We must popularize the concept of innovation as a potential career path for our youth, as they are our innovation and change. The future of St. Lucia relies on the next generation. And if we want to succeed as a nation that supports all generations, we must give them every opportunity under the sun. Under the leadership of Labour, our government would lead based on meritocracy, not on mediocrity. I thank you.
In commentary today, George Goddard looks at the 5-month extension of the state of emergency.
Is the state of emergency clearly being used to create an atmosphere of duress and political uncertainty? Is it to allow for the manipulation and suppression of the electorate and its right to vote freely? Why is the Alan Chastanet regime proposing to extend the state of emergency to October 16th? Recently, on one of the talk shows, the question was raised as to whether elections should be held during the conditions of the COVID pandemic. The host of the show wondered whether the spike being experienced in India and the political issues being raised there would suggest that one should consider whether indeed one's right to exercise his or her franchise should be at least postponed in the interest of protecting life. Such ideas have been around, although not explicitly stated. And now, Alan Chastanet has done what many thought was unthinkable. In India, a multiplicity of factors have apparently created uncertainty. What has been the experience of the Caribbean? There is Guyana at the very beginning of the pandemic, and St. Kitts and Nevis, Trinidad and Tobago, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Dominica. The empirical evidence is that these were held with little impact, if any, from the standpoint of community spread. What has been the most salient concern with regard to the holding of elections under these conditions is the tendency for some governments to abuse the legal and administrative apparatus of the state, to hamper the activities of opposition parties, and to gain unfair advantage at the polls. What has also been of much concern in St. Lucia is the use of resources that should be directed to income support and to improving the gaping holes in our health infrastructure to undertake infrastructural projects aimed at dazzling the electorate into returning them to office. The build, build, build policy that is nothing but an unconscionable misappropriation of the funds we have borrowed from the IMF, CDB, and World Bank for COVID relief. Hasn't the Chastanet government been claiming that its handling of the pandemic is a success, that the protocols are working fine, and that there is no need to panic? And if so, why the need for an extension of the state of emergency? And are we not going about our daily routines at the supermarkets, credit unions, banks, and schools? So why can't we carry out our elections in a protocol-compliant way, without the need for a state of emergency? Are they hoping that the curtailing of democratic expression, while they possibly take the election to the wire, will allow them the unfair advantage that they so desperately need and crave to steal the elections? These are exceedingly dangerous times.
Commentary featured George Goddard speaking on the extension of the state of emergency. To end this edition of SLP Newsbeat, we recap the headlines. Former Labour Party Youth Development Minister Sean Edward exhorts young people to participate in the Labour Party's program to revolutionize agriculture and make it more attractive to young persons. The St. Lucia Labour Party denounces the government's extension of the COVID-19 state of emergency as a ploy to buy time for the elections. We will have more details on this story in our next edition of SLP Newsbeat. I'm Kirby Allen. Thanks for listening.